Okay, let's take a look at this second change of ownership form. And it is a handwritten letter to Phyllis Fuller of Sabine Oil and Gas LLC. And it's regarding Bernice McCowan Garrett. And it reads, Dear Miss Fuller, enclosed are the following: copy of a filed and recorded affidavit of heirship, copy of a death certificate for my mom, list of all 7 surviving children with addresses and social security numbers. In the event you need additional information, you may call me at this number, etc. Best regards, Marion L. Jackson. So I want to make a note in my mind about the date. So this is December 12th, 2013. We received it December 2013, December 17th, 2013. And let's just see what's attached here. This is showing that this affidavit was filed of record on November 25th, 2013. That's the month before they sent this to me, in Harrison County, Texas. And here's the affidavit of heirship filled out. Bernice McCowan Garrett. This is her date of death. 11/14/13. I think that's the day they executed the affidavit. So I'm kind of watching my dates here just to make sure they all make sense. Yeah, this makes sense. And it says to Kohler Allison, whose address is this. Herein referred to as affiant, being of lawful age, deposes and said that she was well acquainted with Bernice McCowan Garrett. Hereinafter referred to as the decedent, and answers these questions based on her personal knowledge. Knew the decedents for 44 years. How well did you know the decedent? Very well. What was your relationship to the decedent? Play like daughter. Well, that's an unusual. So I'm going to kind of make a little note about that. Was this person mentally competent? And she is, but if I was just analyzing it as I go through it, this is what I would be thinking of. And then there's her address. She was in California. She died at 85 in the year 2009. Says she doesn't know whether she left a will or not. Was there any time when she was not of sound mind? Yes, from 2006 to 2009. So 3 years before she died, she was not of a sound mind. May have had Alzheimer's or dementia. Have any proceedings been commenced with respect to the decedent's estate? Now here she says yes. So there's been something filed in California. Complete the following sentence. 2012, Los Angeles County, State of California. And this is the name of the administrator, Judith Taylor Brantley. No debt still owing. She was a widow. Her surviving spouse passed away in 2007, or her spouse passed away in 2007. Only married once with 7 children. And then it breaks down Judith Taylor Brantley. So this is the first child on there, and I note that she is the same person as the executor of this estate. So that is making sense. Marion Lee Jackson, and it gives each of the names of the kids and their date of birth and what their current address is. And then they attach this to the back of it, Judith Taylor Brantley. And then this is just more of the same, scratched through, and then it's subscribed and sworn before me on November the 13th, 2014. So this is all making sense. And then here's her death certificate. So what I look for here is, the name matches. And then here I have date of birth, year, widowed, date of death was 2009. And then it's always interesting to see whether they were a high school graduate, what they did for a living. It doesn't have anything to do with this, but it's just kind of interesting. Here's the person that was giving her the information, Marion L. Jackson, daughter. Here's where she lives. And this was her parents' name. So Bernice's parents' names were Albert and Bertha. And let's see, this is the deposition date or disposition date. It's where she was buried. And yes, he hears her Alzheimer's dementia diagnosis. That was her cause of death. It's always really interesting to see what they passed away from. She also had hypertension and hyperthyroidism. Again, in this case, it helps us to understand why they said she didn't have sound mind. And this is a true copy. It certainly looks like a true copy. It looks like it's actually a certified copy, which is even better. And so this is what we have to analyze. So normally when we're dealing with a death, you have to decide, did this person die with a will or did they die without a will? And if they died with a will, was that will probated? If the will was never probated, it's like they don't have a will. It's like they died intestate, that is, without a valid will. So we don't know in this case whether or not she had a will, but we do know that there was some sort of probate proceedings that were begun. And, if those probate proceedings were completed, and let's say she left her mineral interest to someone that was not a child of hers, that would be a different result than if we relied on this affidavit of heirship. So I'm curious at this point. What I would do is I would go into my company's records and I would see how much money she has in suspense. If she has a lot of money in suspense, then I'm going to be contacting that Judith Taylor Brantley, and I'm going to be asking her for more information about the will. If she doesn't have very much in royalties right now, let's say $100 or less, I may take the business risk of going ahead and transferring the interest to all these parties. But before I release any money, I'm going to have them sign what's called a transfer order. And the transfer order will basically say, if we get sued because we've paid this incorrectly, then you, Judith Taylor Brantley, Marion Lee Jackson, Sandra B. Wilson, etc., you are going to reimburse us for any legal fees that we have to incur to defend this. So we are taking a risk anytime there's an affidavit of heirship, because an affidavit of heirship, remember, does not legally transfer the property. And so we do this as a courtesy, especially if there is a small amount of money in suspense. Now, if there's big money in suspense, then we're going to require them to either do a judicial determination of heirship. That is when the court will say, yes, she died without a will, and these are her heirs. These are her natural heirs pursuant to those state descent and distribution laws. And that's the other thing to keep in mind here is what are the descent and distribution laws. If we go by what is said by the judge, we don't follow descent and distribution laws. So we can just look at what the judgment is based on this filing, and then we could change the ownership based on what the judge's ruling is. Or if it's not very much money, we could take the risk and go ahead and make it out to each of these people, but insist that they signed that transfer order with the language of indemnity. Again, it's all what you're trying to figure out is what is the business risk here? What is the risk that these people are not heirs of hers, or that the will was probated and given to somebody else, versus the likelihood that that's going to happen, and based on the amount of money that is at risk should that happen. So that's your analysis. I think probably if it's like a medium amount of money, like over $100, I would probably contact Judith Taylor Brantley. She's one of the kids anyway, and I would say we received this affidavit of heirship. We understand that probate proceedings were opened on Bernice McGowan, and we just want to please provide us with those probate documents. So that is how I would analyze this. And I think I have a form that says, if you died with a will, I want you to provide this. If you died without a will, I want you to provide that. I think I have that for you. I'll try to find that for you. But really, that's probably the safest thing to do, is then to send her that thing saying, was the will was it probated, was it not probated, etc. So I think the bottom line here is I would send that letter to this Judith Taylor Brantley, or to, who wrote this one? Marion L. Jackson. I would send it to Marion L. Jackson, and I would say, please send the probate records. And that's my analysis of this affidavit of death and heirship that we received. I hope this was helpful to you, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about this tutorial.